In today's video, a 17-strong gang of raiders attack and rob a grow house. The grow house owners retaliate, leaving 2 dead bodies, a crashed car, and a crime scene police have to figure out. Police will find one thing that will reveal everything that happened. This is Curios&Spiritual. We do a deep dive into the case, the police investigation, the trial, and a controversial sentence. We go to February the 20th, 2020. Sajjawat Ramzan and his son, Omar Ramzan, lived at 92 Pensnet Road in Brierley Hill. Wasim Ramzan, brother of Sajjawat, lived at 100 Pensnet Road. Number 94 Pensnet Road was owned by the Ramzan family. Number 94 housed a total of 268 plants. They even had a Vietnamese gardener installed. There was a potential for a large number of lucrative harvests, purported to be £225,000 a year. Sajjawat Ramzan had an armoury of weapons in number 92, crossbows, a sword, knives and a knuckle duster. He was directly involved in the operation and controlled the security in relation to number 94. There was an elaborate system of CCTV cameras, covering number 94, linked to his iPad. Just after 2:30 AM, 6 vehicles arrived that pulled up just past the house. Inside were 17 people, including drivers, who stayed in the vehicles. It was a gang of raiders after the plants, armed with sledgehammers and crowbars. The arrival of the vehicles was spotted on sensors on CCTV cameras, which sent an alarm and alerted Sajjawat Ramzan. Sajjawat Ramzan became aware of what was happening. He immediately alerted Wasim Ramzan, and he woke Omar Ramzan, and they went outside, armed with weapons. The raiders gained access to number 94 through breaking a window. Sajjawat Ramzan went to the rear of the property. He then fired a crossbow bolt at one of the intruders, who was standing at the shed at the end of the garden, and missed him by a matter of inches. Omar and Sajjawat Ramzan then chased the raiders. Both of them possessed weapons. But the raiders in the garden, disturbed, ran off. Wasim Ramzan appeared within a few minutes, and together with Omar Ramzan, they went to the rear of number 94 in order to apparently flush out the raiders. This caused the raiders, including kickboxing star Kazami Douglas, to exit onto the side street through a window, which they'd earlier smashed to gain entry to number 94. The other gang members smashed the bay window to escape. They ran over the road, got into their vehicles and sped away. The 3 men, Sajjawat Ramzan, Omar Ramzan and Wasim Ramzan, then went to the front of the property. Wasim Ramzan caught and rugby tackled Kazami Douglas to the ground. They then gained control of him, holding him in a headlock. Omar Ramzan kicked and stamped on him, whilst Wasim Ramzan held him. Sajjawat Ramzan armed himself with a large crossbow and returned back to the scene. Mohammed Sagir, friends to the Ramzans, arrived by car. He would have seen Sajjawat Ramzan and Omar Ramzan surrounding Kazami Douglas, who was still on the ground being held by Wasim Ramzan. Sajjawat was holding the large crossbow, which was loaded and being pointed at Kazami Douglas's direction. Immediately, Mohammed Sagir proceeded to kick Kazami Douglas, who was still on the ground. Sajjawat Ramzan, at close range, aimed and shot a crossbow bolt at Kazami Douglas, but the bolt missed and hit his brother Wasim Ramzan, which would later kill him. At this time, all the raiders had fled, with one crashing their Audi through a fence into a neighbour's front garden. Omar Ramzan and Mohammed Sagir restrained Kazami Douglas and punched him repeatedly. Sajjawat Ramzan reloaded the crossbow and shot at Kazami Douglas. He would die from his wound. Sajjawat Ramzan cleared away the weapons. Omar Ramzan and Mohammed Sagir helped Wasim Ramzan into Mohammed Sagir's car and drove him to hospital. Police attended at the hospital, having been called to attend by a doctor due to the serious crossbow wound, which is extremely rare. Mohammed Sagir said he'd been called, and when he arrived at the location, Wasim Ramzan was on the floor and not breathing. He made no reference to Kazami Douglas. Omar Ramzan had cleaned up the area, but the crashed Audi, the broken windows and the commotion, police were already on their way there. Wasim Razan died in hospital of his injuries. As soon as police arrived, they were trying to piece together what had happened. There is a man dead on the street, an abandoned Audi crashed over the road, a BMW with a busted window, and a house with the front bay window smashed, with a considerable amount of plants inside. Police would 3D film the crime scene, which would help with what took place and where. What would be an amazing piece of evidence was the CCTV throughout and around the grow house, everything including the raiders turning up, the breaking in of the grow house, and the killing, all captured on camera. It played like a movie. The three men, Sajjawat Ramzan, Omar Ramzan and Mohammed Sagir, were remanded in custody for murder. Though they had turned their phones off, CCTV had the last ping of their phones, and it put them at the scene. Forensics continued collecting evidence and mapping the scene of crime. At Wolverhampton Crown Court opening, the Crown's prosecutor, Adrian Keeling QC, said the property was being used for a grow worth up to £225,000 a year, telling jurors a rival gang had attacked the rear of the grow factory at 2:30 a.m. Mr. Keeling said of Sajjawat and Omar Ramzan, despite the time of night, those two defendants were immediately aware of the attack and the fact that it was taking place. At the start of the trial, Mr. Keeling told the jury they sprang into violent defence of the grow factory operation. Rather than let the rival gang retreat into the night, they blocked their retreat and effectively boxed the raiders into the house. The raiders had no real choice but to smash a window at the front of the house to try and get away. Gary Bell QC, mitigating for Sajjawat Ramzan, said if he ever gets out, it's going to be the deepest twilight of his life. He himself will have to live with the knowledge that it was he who killed his own brother. The judge said, endeavouring to protect that against a raid by a rival criminal group, you caught one of the raiders that was trying to escape. You were all intent on causing him really serious harm. This was no fight. Kazami Douglas was subjected to a concerted assault. I'm afraid in relation to Kazami Douglas, you have shown no remorse. I am satisfied that this was a murder done for gain, namely the protection of your grow operation. All three men were unanimously convicted of murdering Kazami Douglas. Sajjawat Ramzan was also convicted of murdering Wasim Razan, while the other defendants were convicted of his manslaughter. Mohammed Sagir, 33 years old, was ordered to serve at least 20 years before he could be considered for parole. Omar Ramzan, 24 years old, was handed a minimum term of 22 years. Sajjawat Ramzan, 47 years old, must serve a minimum term of 33 years. A further 19 people from the gang of raiders were arrested and convicted, ranging from conspiracy to aggravated burglary. Mohammed Sagir and Omar Ramzan were convicted to a life sentence to serve a minimum of 20 and 24 years for murder and manslaughter they did not commit. Mohammed Sagir and Omar Ramzan were found guilty of a murder of a gang member and manslaughter of Wasim Razan. Mohammed Sagir and Omar Ramzan were found guilty under the controversial joint enterprise. Joint enterprise holds that anyone involved in a crime is equally guilty as the person who committed it. This means that participants are tried, sentenced and labelled if they committed the crime themselves, even if the contributions to the crime are different. A very controversial law. You'll be doing time for someone else's callous actions. It was a good plan. You place the grow house between several properties you own, so you have an eye on it all the time. We've seen this in several cases we have covered in the past, but being raided, the fight back reveals to everyone, including the police, the location of the grow house. We see these grow houses pop up everywhere, abandoned buildings, warehouses, but the new one is actual farms. This has not been revealed in the news, but I'll tell you another reason why Labour's inheritance tax on land has come in. Criminals are moving their fortunes into land and farms. There was no inheritance tax before Labour came in. In fact, criminals buy land, it just sits there going up in value till you want to cash it in. Or you win with a building firm that are working on new builds of government quotas. Buying land is better than the bank. They had a very good plan with the grow house, it was destined to fail, and we've seen this before, defending these. And of course, they're going to. What they're going to do? Carry the plants to the van for them. What happened was a robbery, the owners panicked, and what we have now, we know the whole thing caught on CCTV. We could say, why would you put yourself at risk of robbing a grow? These days robbers would eat the gnomes out your front garden. The whole situation is just insane, and Kazami Douglas and Wasim Razan lost their lives with chilling brutality over plants. But never before have we seen that the killer's own CCTV cameras had filmed the entire incident and had sealed all their fates.